Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom Christmas collaboration. Merry Christmas, everybody. It's the Wednesday right before the holiday. This is your DC Spotlight for this week. Sorry it's coming out a little bit late, December 20th. Usually we drop these at like 6 a.m., if not the night before. But yeah, totally my fault. It was totally on me. I accidentally read the 18 books that are coming out next week on the 27th. And we got ready to record it. I'm like, oh, crap. I didn't read any of the 12 books that we're supposed to be talking about this week. I don't know if DC is putting out 12 books in honor of the 12 days of Christmas or 12 days of the Comic Source. But it is interesting because Rocky and I were talking about this last night. With 12 books this week, and I think it's actually like 13 or 14, couple of the things that we don't talk about, Scooby-Doo and that sort of thing. And in 18 to 20 next week, it's like usually toward the end of the year, you get only a few books because things sort of shut down after Thanksgiving in terms of, the creators are off and you want to give people time off for the holidays and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like DC's trying to cram in a lot of information. They're trying to in some storylines and they're trying to cram in a lot before the dawn of the DCU, I think.
Yeah, they really are. And it's like 30 issues in the last 2 weeks of the year. That's a lot of content.
Crazy.
So that being said, we're going to get started. We're going to put this out right after we finish talking about it. So you'll still get it on Tuesday, the day the books come out. But overall, a pretty solid week. And not only do we have these 12 books this week and 18 next week, a lot of these are like anthologies or oversized specials and whatnot with extra stories. And that's certainly the case with Batman Urban Legends 22, which I guess we're only going to end up with about 2 years worth of Batman Legends, because my understanding is Batman Brave and the Bold, that title that's starting off with the Tom King, Mitch Gerrard story, which looks like it's going to be a Batman Joker story. That is my understanding that's taken over for Batman Urban Legends. That'll be the Batman anthology moving forward. And the other thing that is my understanding is that Brave and the Bold will have more kind of known creators. So I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I'm glad we're not getting two. I'm glad we're not having two Batman anthologies ongoing. But I do like the fact that Batman Urban Legends is, in a way, given some lesser known creators an outlet for their work. But it hasn't always been the best quality. So anyway. That being said, issue 22 of Batman Urban Legends, we have 4 stories here. Nightwing in The Director, part 1 of 2. Jamal Campbell, who is a fascinating, wonderful artist. Was it the Green Lantern book?
And Naomi.
And Naomi, yeah. What was the Green
Lantern? Far Sector.
Right,
yeah.
Far Sector. That he was the artist on. And then you mentioned Naomi. He's writing and drawing this Nightwing story. Adriana Lucas on colors, Lucas Gattoni on letters. Then we have a Batman and Anarchy one-part story called Utility by Yadoy Travis is the writer. Lucas Silveira does the art and colors, and Ferran Delgado on letters. Second part of the Arkham Academy story from Dennis Culver. Hayden Sherman on art, Jordi Belair on colors, Pat Barroso on letters. And then Batman and Murder Club, part 3 of 4, Joey Esposito, Vasco Gregev, and on art, Alex Guermas on colors, and Carlos Mangual on letters. I thought the Jamal Campbell story, Batman or Nightwing and the Director, was an interesting start. The art was gorgeous, as I've come to expect. Interestingly enough, maybe because he's handling the writing duties, Jamal Campbell didn't do the colors, because typically on art he's done in the past. Certainly on Naomi, he did the colors as well. But I think it certainly works with Adriana Lucas, is a very, very talented colorist in his own right. I love that Jamal was bringing in other recent characters in the Batman family with Seer, even though I don't find Seer particularly interesting. It was great to see Seer here because it did ground the story in current Batman continuity. And also, the other thing is that it made sense, like based on this director who seems to be like this obsessive fan of Nightwing, is following him around and then putting these videos up online. It makes sense that Seer is there, right? Seer is very much into technology and the internet and that sort of thing. So I thought it was a good start. I was pretty impressed with what Jamal Campbell has done here. Very well paced, didn't feel crammed into the number of pages that we had. So, yeah, I really liked it. What did you think of the first story, Rob?
I liked it. I thought it was an interesting idea. The idea that this director, this villain, is actually somebody who likes to orchestrate and actually appears to hire people to be villains and criminals, so that it will draw Nightwing out to defeat them, and that this person videotapes them and has a YouTube channel essentially, and basically this has a YouTube channel called The Director. I'm calling it a YouTube channel to relate to our world, and basically doing it to make some money, presumably on the side, I guess. Why not make money off superheroes fighting criminals and actually hiring the criminals to take them down? But things take a turn for the worse here, because this director has more in store than just doing YouTube videos. Essentially, it also ends up murdering a kid and killing off these people that he hires to portray themselves as criminals to draw out Nightwing. One of them ends up dying, and Nightwing fails to save this kid named, I think, Marcus, and ends up getting drawn into a studio where there's a horror scene being filmed, and more people. It looks like more people are going to end up dying as a result of this, and it was quite tragic, and it sort of ends with a cliffhanger. So, and I agree with you, Jamel Campbell, as both the writer and the artist here. He does I don't know if this is his first stint as a writer, but it's a pretty good job, and it tells a fairly good, easy to follow, cohesive, well written, good dialogue story.
Yeah, I agree. I was really impressed. As far as I know, this is his first writing, at least for DC. Maybe he's done some creator-owned stuff that I'm not familiar with. The second story, the Anarchy story, as I said, by Yadoy Travis and Lucas Silveira. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about with giving these lesser-known creators. I've never heard of either of these creators, and they do, a good enough job on this Anarchy story. It's a one and done, and basically what's happened is Anarchy has somehow stolen designs for a bunch of Batman's weapons, batarangs and grappling guns and what have you, and he's put them online, and people are basically 3D printing these Batman weapons, and Anarchy's doing it to kind of prove a point to Batman that he's part of the system. Even though Batman is a vigilante and by definition is not part of the system, certainly sees himself not as part of the fascist, as Anarchy puts it, fascist system to control people. But Anarchy's point is that people are, and throughout at the end of the story, with some people actually printing these weapons that Anarchy has supplied, and then use them to help Batman defeat Anarchy. Sort of the definition of irony, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's again a chance for some lesser known creators to show what they can do. I don't think the story is particularly memorable, but it's again a chance for these creators to show what they can do. So I thought it was fine, but it's probably not something that's going to stick with me long term.
I tend to agree with you that the title of the story and the writer Yadoy Travis, it's called Utility. I'm assuming, in my mind, I think of Utility Belt, because it's a Batman story, and the fact that Anarchy puts out these designs of all these items that are in Batman's utility belt, in particular the Batarang, and a lot of the kids seem to be using them. And ironically enough, as you said, the kids end up designing the Batarang that end up helping Batman defeat Anarchy at the end. I wasn't really sure what the point of Anarchy was in doing that. I don't think it made a lot of sense to me in terms of his motive, but it was I guess a decent enough story, and it made me chuckle a little bit, because it sort of made me realize that every now and then a Batman story comes out that gives you a hint of the real world. I mean, it's surprising that maybe other villains haven't done what Batman has, because, I'm sure there's a bunch of Batarangs lying around Gotham because they're discarded, and I'm surprised, more villains haven't done what Anarchy does in this issue. So I got a chuckle out of it, but not a bad first attempt for a writer. At least I'm not familiar with this writer. It's the first time for me, but not a bad story. But like I said, I think ultimately not particularly memorable.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think, Anarchy gives his reasons, and Anarchy's reasoning is never particularly on point for me. He's always sort of self-deluded. He comes across that way to me anyway. But if I have to assign a point, it's like, hey, Batman, you're not so special. Anybody can do what you do. They just need these weapons, right? But it doesn't exactly go that way in the long run. So next up, we have that Dennis Culver story, as I mentioned. It's called Lil Kitten, and we get some insight into this Lil Kitten character that is going to be a member of the Arkham Academy. I talked to Dennis Culver about Arkham Academy at the Los Angeles Comic-Con recently. He's not sure what's going to come after these three issues, this 3-part story, but he certainly hopes that something else will come out of it. We'll have to wait and see. But But it's pretty interesting because, when I was speaking to him, I'm like, I don't know what to expect from this Arkham Academy. These kids are all sons and daughters of supervillains. Does that mean they want to follow in the footsteps of their parents? Do they want to go the other way and they're going to be heroes because they've seen the bad things that have happened to their parents? Is it the school, this Arkham Academy itself, that's going to exploit them? Like, all that is still up in the air. That's kind of the point of the story. So I kind of hope that we see more of these stories. But this little kitten, he's got a little bit of a mouth on him, and Killer Croc doesn't exactly take it well, I guess you'd say, when he goes in to talk to this. Yeah, he goes in to talk to this classroom of kids. It sort of seems like a scared straight type situation. If that's the case, based on what happens to the little kitten on the last page, I would think that it would be very effective. So yeah, this story in and of itself may not be that impactful or have long lasting consequences, but I think what this story shows, the second part of this Arkham Academy, is the potential. Like this Arkham Academy storyline and concept has a lot of potential. Certainly to see some Batman villains in a different context, and it's compelling to see like what might happen to these characters, because as Dennis told me, it's like some of these kids may follow in their parents' footsteps. Some of them may become heroes instead, and whether or not the people running the academy might not exploit them, sort of a granny goodness type situation, would be another storyline that you could go down, another avenue. So yeah, I'm very intrigued by this, and I hope we get more than just these 3 parts. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. This is by far my favorite story, and my favorite story in Batman Urban Legends as of late. And first of all, absolutely. I mean, I'm a speculator as well as a collector, like so many of us are. Speculator alert on the cover. If you're picking up a cover, pick up the cover. It shows the entire first year class of Arkham Academy. This is people do not be dismayed by the disastrous Teen Titans Academy. One of the criticisms of Teen Titans Academy, written by Tim Sheridan, is that we rarely saw the actual students in the class. And frankly, they were thoroughly uninteresting characters. But these are interesting characters. Sloran, Little Kitten, Enigma, Deathtrap, The Noise, Wannabe Wilson, the teachers, Dr. Otis, and we got 2 officers, Wise and Horn. The names are even more interesting. This is how you pull people into potential like school class of potential superheroes / supervillains. And don't be fooled by the name Little Kitten. This guy's Little Kitten, but he's a wannabe Catwoman sidekick. He's a guy who wanted to be a young man that wanted to be a rapper, but he ends up being a failure. He's a failed rapper, and then he tried to commit some crimes to get the attention of Catwoman, and he utterly failed. And he even refused. He could have gotten off with a slap on the wrist with the legal system in Gotham. He had a good lawyer, but he wanted to do the time because he wants to build a reputation. So this Little Kitten, he's a juvenile delinquent, plain and simple. And this, Dr. Otis is trying to scare the kids, and that's why she sends Killer Croc into this classroom. And it's perfect because and Dennis Culver, well, I mean, he's the writer. He says the obvious, but he didn't need to tell you. You stated what Dennis Culver said, but it's obvious from this story that one of the questions I have as the reader is, which one of these kids is going to end up in the straight and narrow? Which one of these kids is going to end up being a supervillain? And I think the potential for misdirection, the potential for drama, for character development, it's all here. I'm pulled in, and I was pulled in the first issue. This one pulls me in even farther because these are kids that are willing to push the envelope against someone like Killer Croc. So these are very, very it's a question mark, the future of what these kids are. But this is how you get me interested. I'm as excited for this as I am for Strange Academy. This is more interesting to me than even Gotham Academy. Arkham Academy is where it's at. And I still say between Arkham Academy, Gotham Academy, Teen Titans Academy, we have potential for a very intriguing rivalry between all those academies if DC Comics could get their act together and do it right. Dennis Culver, to his credit, is doing this right.
Yeah, you talking like a big Quidditch tournament between all 4 academies? Or?
Yeah, whatever, man. Whatever it is in the DC universe.
All right, last story, Batman Murder Club, part 3 of 4. We know a bit of a time travel story with Bruce's parent showing back up, and what I appreciated that Joey Esposito did in this last issue is Batman, Damian, even Bruce's parents themselves are asking the same questions that we're asking. Like, okay, well, is having Thomas and Martha brought forward in time from before they died, like, how's that going to affect the timeline? How's it going to screw things up? Do they need to go back? How long do they have? So he's being very meta with it. So I certainly appreciate that. The Vasco Gregev art has been fantastic throughout. So a really interesting story. And it's the other aspect of it that's a little more esoteric, I guess you could say, is the way the Waynes react when they find out Bruce is being Batman. Like, is this the way you honor our legacy? And is if this were to stand, if this continuity were to stand, if you take Bruce's parents from a time that they were, but before they were killed, and bring them forward, and have them have a relationship with Bruce, does it remove his reason for becoming Batman? Like, how does that affect him, like, psychologically? He feels a little uncertain, which is a very strange way for Batman to feel, for Bruce to feel. He's always so driven and so focused and so dedicated to his mission, and it's very subtle here. And I'm giving Joey Esposito credit that that's how he's wanting Bruce to come across, or maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But I think it really works. And I'm enjoying the story. I'm sort of curious to see how it ends, because it feels like it's a story that's much bigger than 4 parts. And this is the 3rd part. We only have 1 left. Really don't know where it's going to go. I hope it doesn't resolve itself by just saying, okay, well, if we keep Thomas and Martha Wayne in the present time any longer, it's going to screw up everything. We'll have like a Flashpoint situation. So we just have to kind of put them back where they were. And then, I mean, maybe that's why Bruce is so hesitant to even have any interactions with them. He doesn't want to have to relive the trauma of losing them all over again. But that'll feel sort of anticlimactic if they just put him back and, sorry, they can't be saved. Like, then it's going to be like, what was the point of this story? So, yeah, I'm curious. I think I'm giving Joey Esposito more credit than that. He's trying to say something more than that. So I'm really curious to see what that's going to be, how this is all going to wrap up in the 4th part. What were your thoughts on it? I think you're on mute, Rocky.
Sorry about that. The story involves this character, Time Commander, who sort of created the murder club in the future, allowing for you can time travel and you can get revenge on somebody you want to get revenge for, and then but his master plan went awry because he wanted to cover up the crimes, that even so you could get revenge on somebody who wronged you in the past by time traveling and killing them, and this is the murder club. But then he created a pill to give to his clients that did this, so that they would that it would erase their memory, but they end up dying as well. And somehow we still don't know how the Waynes, who wanted to kill the Waynes, and who brought the Waynes to the future, and who would want to kill the Waynes anyway, since the Waynes were destined to die in Crime Alley anyway. So why would you care? But ultimately, we're not really sure. It ends up with it looks like the Court of Owls ends up at the end of this, but the character work is what I think works here. And there's some great moments where Alfred and Damian and Nightwing talk to Bruce's parents, because Bruce's parents, his father in particular, is very upset with him. How could you, this isn't our legacy. We gave you everything, and you're this vigilante, and they seem to be disappointed, or at least Thomas Wayne seems to be disappointed in his son. Very different than a Flashpoint Batman, by the way. Very different take. And it's up to Alfred showing, Alfred's always kept scrapbooks, and the moments where Alfred's showing his scrapbooks to the Waynes and showing, look, your son is amazing. He saved so many lives. This is what he's done. And it's in those character moments where I think that this is going to be, that's the true heart and soul of this story, is those character moments, as opposed to the larger plot itself. And in that respect, I think it works, and it'll make for a nice story when it wraps up. Oh, sorry, you're on mute now.
Yeah, no, we're terrible. Yeah, I think I agree with you, and we'll have to see how it finishes up with that final story. So, all right, Batman and Robin number 4 is up next. For some reason, I thought this was only a 4-issue series. There is one to go, but I think it doesn't come out until February for whatever reason. Because this sort of felt like this could be the last issue, and I really didn't even realize that there's another one to go. But anyway, written by Mark Waid, Mahmoud Asrar, and Scott Godlewski are the artists. Jordan Miller on colors, Steve Wands on letters. This hasn't been my favorite. This Batman versus Robin it comes out of what we had in the Robin series by Joshua Williamson with Lazarus Island. We know that the demon Nezha has taken over Damian. Damian's sort of his disciple. They've been going around kidnapping all these magic users and stealing their magic. And we're reaching the climax here as Batman's been lured to Lazarus Island. I guess because Nezha thinks that Batman can disrupt his plans, and he wants Damian to take out his father. I guess because he thinks that will mean his control over Damian is complete. That's never been quite clear to me. But of course, Batman being Batman sort of turns the tables on Nezha in this issue. So I just thought this was okay. I'm probably going to be happy once we're on the other side of Lazarus Island because, as I've said, magic is never my favorite to read about in comics, only because if a writer can't figure out what to do, just snap their fingers and have a spell and fixes everything. And yeah, it's a little bit too ex deus machina for me. But I will give a lot of credit to Mark Waid, as always, that this is well plotted and well scripted and well paced, and the art's pretty solid as well. So it's a good story. It's just not my particular cup of tea. So I think you're enjoying a lot more than me, Rocky. What did you think?
Well, judging from your very short review, I think I am enjoying it more than you, my friend. I love it. I mean, look, Doctor Fate's helmet on Batman. I mean, I feel like I'm playing with my action figures and changing heads between the action figures. I mean, it's this is Batman wants to free his son Damian from the control of the demon Nezha. The demon Nezha wants to get revenge on Batman because in the world's finest story told by Mark Waid in the first 6 issues, Batman and Superman caged the demon Nezha. He was eventually freed, ironically, by Damian, and Damian's now used as the vehicle in which to get revenge upon Batman. And Batman here, Mark Waid does a good job of scripting Batman's intelligence and strategic capabilities, in that Batman goes ahead and he cases the joint, he cases the cave, one time to get his bearings, and then he fights his son Damian, and Waid does a good job sort of scripting how Batman is fighting his son Damian. Damian is a very good fighter. Waid is aware that Damian is aware of some fighting styles that even Batman is not. Batman even compliments, makes note of how good a fighter Damian is, and that's consistent with the Robin series by Joshua Williamson, where Damian Wayne did get a lot of experience with different fighting styles, and ultimately winning that tournament on Lazarus Island, and ultimately. But this is all a ruse in order to allow, because what he did is that he freed Talia. Talia was captured by the demon Nezha, and just as the demon Nezha arrives on the scene to watch Damian defeat Batman, Talia shows up, takes out and distracts the demon Nezha, and Batman manages in that moment to have, with the help of Black Alice, he sees the helmet of Naboo, and he gets the helmet of Naboo, and is basically utilizing the power of, because Dr. Fate's helmet is imbued with all the magical energies of all the magic bears that Nezha had Black Alice filter the magic into. And so Batman, even though he's not a very good magic user, it's still a very powerful helmet, and he's able to hold his own against the demon Nezha, but not before he is mortally injured, but ultimately healed near the end of it. And then Black Bull shows up, and that's, or rather, the the demon Nezha's son, King Bullfire, and that's from the Monkey Prince series. He shows up in order to kill his father, the demon Nezha, and in that fight, the Lazarus Island essentially explodes, and because the Bullfire is basically vowing revenge, and the entire planet will suffer if he doesn't have his revenge against his father. And this will lead into, this is going to be continued in Lazarus Planet Alpha #1, and then return back for Batman versus Robin issue 5 on February 28th. So I'm excited for this, and I think this is there's consistency here with the story that Waid is telling. What I love what Mark Waid is doing, he's doing what Jeff Johns is doing in the world of Stargirl and the Lost Children and Justice Society. Mark Waid is doing with Lazarus Planet and World's Finest. And I really like the fact that they got their own little worlds that they're playing in, and they're not inconsistent with each other. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I can't argue that he's not being consistent and he's not building on what Williamson did and what he did in his own World's Finest. But again, I think it's just I'm just not that interested in Magic users, regardless of whether it's DC, Marvel, or something else. But yeah, it ends with the Batman using the helmet, as you said, which that was cool. Like seeing Batman put the Fate helmet on was cool. But then seeing the island explode, and we know, Lazarus Island is a big event coming up. Lazarus Island actually a volcano and explodes, and Lazarus Pit juices or whatever you want to call it, liquid is spilling out everywhere. We have seen some mashups of other characters, not just Batman, Dr. Fate, but yeah, I'm curious to see what it's going to be. I just don't know how much I'm going to enjoy Lazarus Planet, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But speaking of Mark Waid's World's Finest, issue 10 is out today as well. He is the writer, Dan Mora, the artist, Tamra Bonvillain on colors, Steve Wands on letters. I really enjoyed this, and I saw some articles and people talking about the big reveal in this book, and maybe people will go back and want to pick up issues of 7, 8, and 9 based on who this Boy Thunder turns out to be. I kind of have my doubts about that, because it's not like this is the first appearance of anybody. So will it really matter? I mean, first chronological appearance, I guess, but not first publishing appearance. But it's pretty interesting what Waid is doing. Although I could see some fans maybe complaining that he's going back and highlighting his own stuff, tying into stuff he's done in the past. But I think every writer does that to some extent. So I didn't mind it. And again, really fast paced, tons of action. And I didn't see this one coming, I got to admit. So I'll let you take over, Rocky, and kind of spill the beans on who Boy Thunder turns out to be.
Well, the issue starts off. We know that the Boy Thunder, David, and that's really all we really knew about his name. His name is David. He was captured by the Key and the Joker last issue, and this issue starts off with him being tortured. The Joker is questioning young David. He wants to know the secret identities of Batman and Superman, and David won't tell him. And of course, the Joker is pretty good at psychological torment and torture, and that's exactly what he does to David. Meanwhile, Waid does a good job scripting the detective work done by Batman and the work done by Superman. This is a very angry Superman, as Batman says. When Superman is, Superman can handle grief well, but he's not good at handling his anger. And Superman is angry, and he's looking for David. Batman's looking for David. The Teen Titans are looking for David all throughout Gotham, and ultimately they do find David. They find a warehouse where the Key has all his doors. And they got to then the mystery becomes, how do they know which door is the Joker and the Key behind that they're torturing David on? And ultimately, Batman, of course, says, well, the Joker wears gloves, the Key doesn't wear gloves, so Superman uses his X-ray vision to find the door with the fingerprints of the Key on it, and then ultimately that's where they locate the Key and the Joker. Meanwhile, David is pleading for his life. The Joker takes a respite from torturing him, and the Key is talking to David, and David, pleading for his life, says, I'm not even from here, I'm from a different universe. And so the Key is all excited. Oh my God, there's a multiverse and you're from another reality. And so this intrigues the Key, because what is the Key going to do with that information in regard to the origins of David? And ultimately, David is rescued. Superman and Batman and the Titans do manage to get in there to rescue him. And the revelation at the end is that, David is attacking the Joker at the end, and he looks cruel, he looks mean, he looks like he wants to kill the Joker. And of course, Batman and Superman, Robin is there saying, calm down, don't take the, don't kill him, don't kill the Joker. And David looks, he's got that glowing bright eye, and then there's a peek into the future, and it looks like David will one day become the character known as Magog. And Magog being, of course, the arch nemesis of the antagonist of the famous Kingdom Come storyline, which was written by Mark Waid. What's very fascinating about this is that Magog has a long history in the DC universe since Kingdom Come. He was actually a Lance Corporal David Reed, who was a Marine assigned to stop the looting of a national museum in Iraq during the Iraq War. And this was in 2008, 2009 during the Justice Society of America comic book run. And he actually ended up becoming Magog as a result of that. And the only similarity between that origin of Magog was that character's name was David Reed. Well, this character's name is David, but his last name, to my knowledge, is not Reed. So Mark Waid did sort of give us a little bit of a hint with the name David, but wow, who would have guessed that? It makes me wonder, is this storyline taking place on Earth 22? Is this a Kingdom Come Earth? I doubt it. Probably isn't. This is probably a Magog of a different story of our Earth. So is David going to be able to prevent fate, to prevent the Kingdom Come reality from coming to reality on Earth Zero? We don't know, but I love the fact that Mark Waid is going there. He's planting that seed, and he's doing it in an interesting way. And this is infinitely more interesting than the Magog character in the mid to late 2000s that everybody hated. Magog even had his own series for a period of time, and it only lasted 12 issues, and it wasn't very good. It was canceled due to low sales, and it wasn't Magog's never been a particularly interesting character. The most interesting he's ever been was in Kingdom Come. And so it's nice to see Mark Waid. It's appropriate that Mark Waid is doing this. I find this origin more interesting as a potential origin for Magog than I do in any previous iteration of the character since Kingdom Come. So I enjoyed it. So what do you think of the revelation?
Yeah, again, I didn't see it coming at all. And to me, what's most interesting, it isn't even David, or that David might be Magog, or a different version of Magog, or any of that. Like, the most interesting part of this is this hint that David could possibly become Magog, and the context that brings to his relationship with Bruce and Superman in present day, and the Titans as well, right? Because he's sort of a de facto member of the Teen Titans in this story, in this reality. So can Superman and Bruce, can their tutelage, can the camaraderie of the other Titans, can it put this David on a different path, where he maybe won't become Magog? That's interesting to me. And then the other part of it is like, well, David, it's the Joker. Just go ahead and kill him, man. Like, I'm all for that, because the Joker's just a piece of. Who can blame David?
Yeah.
He was being like, here's this poor kid that's already been through all this trauma. It's not just that he lost his parents or he lost his world, like, oh, Krypton exploded, that's terrible. This guy lost his whole reality, his entire universe, his entire multiverse, his entire corner of the multiverse was wiped out. Like, how much trauma is one kid supposed to go through? Now he's being tortured by this insane clown. Can't blame him for wanting to kill the Joker. So, yeah. Again, Mark Waid firing on all cylinders. Isn't it so great to have him back at DC? Don't get me wrong, I loved his work over at Marvel, especially his Doctor Strange run. But man, I think the guy, there's something special about him on DC characters in my mind.
I agree. Absolutely.
All right, so this is one that we'll probably have a lot to say about at a later time, because it's hard to unpack everything that is here. But DC Crisis on Infinite Earths #7, Dawn of DC. Joshua Williamson handles the script. Daniel Semper, Jack Herbert, Giuseppe Camuncoli, Cam Smith, and Rafa Sandoval on art. Alejandro Sanchez, Alex Guermas, Romulo Fajardo Jr., Matt Herms on colors. Tom Napolitano handles the letters. Unfortunately, from the start, this series didn't really ever coalesce for me and tell a story that I found compelling. I will say that in the end, with everything sort of wrapping up here, it does a good enough job doing what I think it was supposed to do, which is providing a soft reset for the DC universe. Um, but in a way, and it's sort of, this is sort of acknowledged in the issue itself. In a way, it feels a little bit like a cheat, right? Like we were told there was this, or I assumed there was this big bad, there was this entity that was controlling the Great Darkness that recruited Pariah, and then come to find out it was just the Great Darkness, which never made sense to me because it wasn't completely sentient. And then come to find out it's Pariah himself who's been diluted. I just don't think Pariah works that way. Wasn't created that way. Didn't have a lot of agency even back in the original Crisis on Infinite Earth. So I don't think it was necessarily a good choice for this. And yet you kind of can't blame him for doing what he did because, again, this idea of going through all this trauma. But then even the heroes themselves are like, so yeah, we get what Pariah did. He sort of deluded himself. He was hearing voices. He took a little bit of the Great Darkness, but not all of it because he couldn't control it all because he's not powerful enough. But ultimately, what he was doing was wanting to restore the multiverse, which isn't a bad thing. So it's like,
Yeah.
wait, what? So why were you trying to stop him in the first place? Couldn't it just feels like it's one of these things. Like y'all could have just sat down and talked and restored the multiverse by working together instead of having all these battles that sort of seem pointless. Um, and then ultimately, it's the nihilism of Deathstroke here that even once Pariah is defeated, as we saw last year, where he shot with the cannon, with Deathstroke being infected with the Great Darkness, he's like, well, yeah, maybe Pariah wasn't really that bad after all because he was trying to restore the multiverse. But what being infected with the Great Darkness has shown me is just how much pain there is in the world. And I don't want my kids to ever feel any pain. So I'm just going to destroy reality. Like, really? First of all, to me, again, much like Pariah being a poor choice, I think Deathstroke's a poor choice. You have all these like cosmic level villains from Darkseid to Anti Monitor to you could even done something with Phantom Stranger or Spectre or come up with somebody new even the World Forger. But really, Deathstroke is your like reality destroying villain here. Like it just doesn't really make sense. My contention, and I think I said it last time we talked about the last issue. It might even have been you. The anti-monitor. The anti-monitor should have been the one that came back and did the. If you really want to homage Crisis on Infinite Earths, you should have just brought the anti-monitor back. That would have made more sense to me. But again, it's not all bad because it is a soft reset. It does give DC editorial a chance to make some changes. Hopefully, they bring Alfred back. They're not going to de-age John Kent. Sorry, everybody. I might want that. You might want that. That's not going to happen. Um, but there are some cool things. I think the changes they made to Dr. Light character are interesting, and it opens up some ideas going forward that can be kind of fun. Plus, we got some fantastic. If no other reason that I like the fact that this series exists for the incredible Daniel Sampere art, there's this 2-page spread where almost the entire pantheon of DC heroes gets Black Adamized. Oh, I don't know. That's not really a word, but I just made it one. But they're all kind of black and gold and shiny like Black Adam is, and that's a fantastic double-page spread. Even if the stars on Donna Troy are a little problematic because they kind of look like pasties on her chest, which just I'm sure Daniel put them where he did so that they weren't like placed like pasties would look, but it's still I can't look at that and not think that. And not that I've spent a lot of time in strip clubs or anything, but it just my eye keeps getting drawn to those stars on Donna Troy's chest. But regardless of that, it's a fantastic image, and Daniel killed himself on this series, and man, I love it. Like I can see myself going back through and flipping through pages of the series, not to necessarily read the story again, but just to look at this art, man, just gorgeous. So very happy for him that he got to do a big event like this, and very excited to see what he does next. So I'll leave it there and let you talk about it because I know you'll probably bring up the epilogue because I just finished talking to Jeremy Adams and even he has some questions about the epilogue that you guys will hear in the 12 Days of the Comic Source episode coming up with Jeremy Adams in a few days. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead, give us your thoughts, Rocky, and then we can talk about that.
Well, first, just to build on what you're saying, I mean, you're right that we can't do this justice. We could talk for 3 hours easy just on this issue alone. There's so much information in this issue. A lot of it is contradictory, somewhat confusing, and it again, inherent contradictions to the previous issues. I'm not sure what Williamson wanted to do. He crams in an epilogue with teasing future directions that, quite frankly, don't really excite me too much, to be honest. And it just seems like he was writing for editorial. He was writing toward a preformed agenda, which even if that's true, and I believe it is true, the story shouldn't feel like as forced as it has been. This was a Nightwing story. This wasn't a Dark Crisis. This absolutely was not in any way, shape, or form, in my view, a sequel to the original Crisis. It's an insult to call this a crisis, let alone a sequel to the original one. Shame on DC. This was a Nightwing story. How many issues did we get Nightwing fighting Deathstroke? I mean, really. And the final insult on this, and there's a lot of insults to be made, is we don't know who the villain is. Joshua Williamson never established who the villain is. As a matter of fact, there's a page where Mr. Terrific actually jokes that they don't know who the villain is. It's unbelievable that the page is ridiculous. He says, Mr. Terrific, talking to Zatanna, says, "What did you find, Zatanna?" Zatanna says, "The great darkness continues to rest, quiet again and unconcerned with us. It proves, apparently, that Pariah's machine allowed him to tap into just a fraction of the darkness's true powers." Hal Jordan then responds and says, "So Pariah was never connected to the great darkness? It was all in his head?" No, Hal Jordan, that's not what Zatanna just said. Zatanna just said he tapped into the darkness. Are you retarded, Hal Jordan? It's not Hal Jordan. It's the writing. This makes no sense. We don't know who the villain is. We thought it was the Great Darkness. It wasn't. We thought it was Darkseid. It wasn't. We thought it was the Dark Army. It wasn't. We thought it was Pariah. It wasn't. We then thought it was Deathstroke. It wasn't. It wasn't Nightwing, even though he gets possessed by the Great Darkness here. We don't know who the villain is here, and apparently nobody cares. Nobody cares. Barry Allen says that, Hawkgirl says to Barry, what do we tell people? What do we tell people had happened here? And Barry Allen says, nothing. They can believe it was the Great Darkness if that will help ease their worries. Well, thank you, Barry. You're just a stellar of optimism. It's just so filled with hope. Not a big deal. We don't know who's to blame for this multiversal crisis. And then what does Mr. Terrific say? That seems fair. And he has this shit-eaten grin on his face. I actually wanted to reach through the comic book meta and strangle him. It's so frustrating. And if that isn't bad enough, we get to the end, and then after all they've been through, finally they've managed to overcome this great darkness or / villain who is never identified. And Batman decides that, well, since we don't know who this great villain was of this multiversal crisis, I know what I'm going to do. We're going to disband the Justice League. What a great time to disband the Justice League. Let's disband the Justice League. What better time to disband the Justice League just when we don't know who a multiversal villain was that created another crisis. And don't worry, we'll let Nightwing go form the Titans. This is, from a storytelling point of view, this makes no sense, and it's just straight up terrible. I don't like this. However, am I excited for a new Titans led by Nightwing? Sure. But do we need to have a Justice League disbanded? No. But it's just foolish. We have your favorite character, Amanda Waller. We got the introduction of the Council of Light at the end that wants to destroy metahumans because metahumans are a threat. And I will say that given the complete uselessness of all the heroes in this particular series, there really is an argument that can be made that heroes are the problem. And so this Council of Light, which are these group of beings from the Young Justice cartoon animated series, and at least in the series on the cartoon, I believe it consists of Vandal Savage and Lex Luthor, and we don't know who the members are here, but the Council of Light believe that metahumans are a threat, and they hire Amanda Waller and a new Suicide Squad apparently to take out the all the metahumans, and so that will be a future storyline as well. We then there are there's allusions to Lazarus Planet. There's allusions to storyline going on in the pages of Superman and with Failsafe. So there's the epilogue just sort of recites some of those. We get a celebration of George Perez. One of the variant covers that I want to give a shout out to. The variant cover is absolutely fantastic. It's a tribute to George Perez. It's got multiple artists on it, from Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Joel Jones, Dave Gibbons, Daniel Samper, Dan Jurgens, Kevin McGuire, Francis Manipal, Mike McCone, Dave Gibbons, Scott Koblish, Colleen Duran, Phil Jimenez, Scott Collins. I could go on and on. Their artistic renditions are all on this alternate cover. It's the only cover I ordered, by the way, for this series. I would pay extra for it. I don't believe there's an extra charge for it, but because I have to say the other covers, what a disappointment on some of the other covers for this event, because Dawn of the DCU. This doesn't feel like the Dawn of the DCU. This feels like the end of an era to me, the end of competent crisis level storytelling. I'm not a big fan of this, of the manner of which this story was told. Even Nightwing somehow overcoming the Great Darkness. How does Nightwing overcome the Great Darkness? He gets infected with the Great Darkness after Black Adam calls down the lightning, which helps give all the other heroes some of his powers. It also helps to push out some of the darkness, the Great Darkness that possess some of the heroes. Then it goes into Deathstroke. Deathstroke is freed from the influence of the Great Darkness, but apparently Nightwing isn't. It goes into Nightwing, so then the lightning missed Nightwing, even though Nightwing was near Black Adam when he called down the lightning. That's kind of odd. But Nightwing apparently resisted the Great Darkness, this great all-powerful force of all the multiverses, this Great Darkness. Nightwing can just float like the Messiah. He's the new Christ-like avatar of the DC universe, apparently, and he can just think of hope, and boom, the darkness just dissipates and disappears. Absolute nonsense. Deus Ex Machina BS. If Joshua Williamson wanted to write a story about legacy, then you could have told a story in the pages of Teen Titans. It could have been 4 issues long, and it would have had more impact than this. As it stands, this just frustrates me to no end. Daniel Samper art is fantastic. Black Adam, fantastic. The way Black Adam steps up to the plate here, makes the sacrifice. This is awesome. This truly is. Is this a celebration of legacy in the DCU? No, it isn't. It's a celebration of Nightwing. Nightwing might be legacy, but there was no other characters beyond Nightwing that really stood up to the plate. This was a failure in that regard. It was in name only an idea of legacy because Nightwing was one of the first ones. But in any event, I don't mean to belittle it. It had its moments with great art and what have you. But at the end of the day, this was a failure. Finally, the Dark Army. What happened to the Dark Army? Apparently, they just went home. Darkseid, Necron, all those multi-level threats. We're not possessed anymore by the Dark Knights. We'll just leave. We'll just leave the battle scene. They just go home. That's it. That's it. This is embarrassing. I mean, honestly, this is embarrassing. I am astonished by this. And the one good thing is that Green Arrow, the one character that I'm not a big Green Arrow fan, at least he got lost at the end of this. Unfortunately, he'll be found because Joshua Williamson obviously is doing a Green Arrow series, so that's rather convenient. I won't be collecting that because I have no concern about Green Arrow being found when it's to be pulled back into an. I'm still too angry at the way this ended. Such a huge disappointment. Sorry for the rant, but that's how I feel. Anyways.
So you didn't like it?
Oh man, I like I said, I love the art, beautiful art, but no, I
can't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. This was a Nightwing story. I think Joshua Williamson admitted that at some point, but yeah, there are. I mean, the problems are many. Just to focus on the positive, the art is fantastic. We're giving Daniel Samper a lot of credit. I mean, there are other artists in this particular issue because it is oversized. I don't know who did the pages with Black Adam. You mentioned him being kind of a star of the series. I did like his characterization. What is interesting is when he does take on
Deathstroke,
Deathstroke, and then after he's talking to the heroes, even though they draw him as the version of Black Adam that has hair and has the widow's peak, which I I enjoy. They do give him the Rock's eyebrow raise at one point, and his face does resemble Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, oh, so now we're drawing Black Adam, even when he's not bald. We're drawing him with the Rock's face, huh? Okay, with the what was it called, the people's eyebrow or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not a wrestling fan, so I don't know. But yeah, that's problematic enough with all that going on, and I mentioned one of the positives of this is kind of a soft reset, and you can do whatever you want. Um, but I would like to know when, how, what happened on Earth 3 with Amanda Waller. Why is she back? Like, she was taking over Earth 3. She was getting her own Superman. Like, all that's just gone because time's gone by.
Well,
Like,
I would imagine you asked Jeremy Adams that question. Is Jeremy
he
Adams know what happened
he
on
brought
Mandalore?
it up. Jeremy Adams brought it up. He's like, "Did I miss something?" I was like, "Yeah, isn't she on Earth 3?" And he's like, "Well, if they need somebody to tell that story, I got ideas. I'll tell that story." But even he, like, this guy works for DC, and even he's like, I don't know,
I mean,
like,
he
how did she come
co-wrote
back? When did she come
He
back?
co-wrote War on Earth 3,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 100%.
Good Lord, man.
So yeah, can we? Yeah, can we find out who, how is she back? I mean, don't get me wrong. Um, I'm not happy she's back. I can't stand Amanda Waller. We all know that. Happy to have her on Earth 3 and not be around ever. And once again, like at what point do you stop pretending that she's anything but an outright villain? She's just an outright villain.
Yeah.
Here she's being recruited by this Council of Light or whoever they are to take out all the superpowered beings, hero, villain, or otherwise, in the DCU. Amanda Waller is a villain, 100%. And if I had to choose between never reading another Joker story or never reading another Amanda Waller story, I hate to admit it, but I'd have to stop and think about that. I really would, as much as the Joker's overused. You could say that that maybe is the one thing about Amanda Waller is she's not overused. Um, Borderline, but yeah, don't know how she's back, but maybe we'll find out someday. Who knows? All right, up
Yeah.
next we have DC versus Vampires: All Out War Part 6, written by Alex Packnadel and Matthew Rosenberg. Pencils, inks, and gray tones by Pasquale Colano. Red tones by Nicola Rahai. Letters by Troy Petrie. I was really confused by this issue only because I read the last issue of DC versus Vampires, the regular series, first, being that I read last or next week's issues before I read these. And then I went back and read this, and I was like, oh, this makes a lot more sense now. And so does that ending. Um, the art, as you know, I'm not going to go over it again. Don't care for this black, white, and red. I think this book would be better served to have it all in color. Um, and there's nothing here that really is that memorable. I hated seeing this version of Superman because that's kind of the focus of this issue. Superman battling this vampiric, almost evil Superman battling Deathstroke and Midnighter and Mary Marvel and Booster Gold. Um, it just, man, even Superman being bitten, I just don't think it turns him evil the way this Superman is in here. But I get it. You want to tell your story. You want to be shocking. But yeah, this whole DC versus vampires, and I'll talk about it more next week when we get to the conclusion of it. It just hasn't really worked for me. And the pacing, as I've mentioned before, it went from being this what felt like a small story, slowly paced, to this breakneck pace to tell this story that encompasses the entire DC universe and the entire Earth, and there's no sun, and yeah, it's big stakes and big consequences, and nobody is safe. And in those ways, I guess it's interesting and compelling because anybody will die at any moment. Um, but yeah, it's not really for me. So I just thought it was okay. The backup story with Poison Ivy by Mirka Andolfo, she writes and draws it with letters by Troy Petrie, was more interesting to me. But ultimately, again, it's Black Ivy as a vampire, apparently. And because she's not fully human, she's affected by the vampire virus, I'll call it, differently than people that are full human. She's part plant, so it makes her unique, and that's a more interesting idea that I'd like to see explored more. The other thing is the idea of, or the execution of the black and white and red art by Mirka Andolfo works a lot better. I think her art style is just more clean, and it's easier to understand what's going on in the backup than in the main story. So I enjoyed the backup here a lot more. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think this was my favorite out of all of these 6 issues of the DCV Vampires All Out War. This was my favorite issue because I actually think that for me the black, white, and red works best in this issue. I'm not a fan of it myself. I thought more of the issues were more confusing than they needed to be. I don't think it worked overall, but it worked the best in this 6th and final issue leading into the main series proper. The heart and soul of this All Out War series for me has been the relationship between Deathstroke and Mary Bromfield, i.e. Mary Marvel. Who would have thought that you could write a story about a relationship or basically a mentor-mentee or almost like just a friendship between Deathstroke, Slade, and Mary Bromfield? That's the heart and soul of this. And these what Alex Packnadel and Matthew Rosenberg do to great effect here in this issue is that they made me feel the emotion that Slade Wilson felt, sacrificing his life, essentially getting killed by Superman kills Slade Wilson, and he sacrifices his life. Mary Marvel essentially killed Billy Batson, killed Shazam in the last issue, and is afraid. As Mary Bromfield, she's afraid to turn back into Mary Marvel because she's afraid that she'll turn more as a vampire. But she turns back into Mary Marvel upon seeing that Deathstroke is killed, and she basically attacks Superman, but she's ultimately about to be defeated because Superman kills in a brutal manner. He rips apart Midnighter. He uses his heat vision. He literally cuts Booster Gold in half. I mean, he's absolutely brutal. He kills Azrael, and he's about to kill Mary Marvel. But then Deadman possesses the body of Slade Wilson, and it's such a touch. It's a gruesome moment. Slade Wilson, basically runs his swords through Superman, and as Superman dies, he has a vision of he talks to his dad as he dies, and it's quite the moment, and in particular, Mary Marvel doesn't know that she holds a dying Slade Wilson in her arms, but she doesn't realize that Deathstroke's already dead. She's actually talking to Boston Brand, who's possessed in his body, but yet she doesn't really realize that. And of course, no one wants to tell her the truth because it's such a heartfelt moment. And I thought it worked really well. I thought the character moments here, it worked. I felt it, and the art never took away those moments as it had, in my view, in some of the previous issues because of the black, white, and red. So I thought it worked. And I was less impressed with Thirst, although I will say that Mirka Andolfo, I'm not a big fan of her artistic style, but it absolutely works here with the black, white, and red in the backup. It's just, I'm not, we're near the end of this series, so knowing that yet another iteration of Poison Ivy doesn't particularly interest me, but it adds more to the mythology here. So overall, I thought this was the best issue, and I'm really looking forward to Mary Marvel at the end of this taking Captain Cold, and they're going to be off to Australia, where Supergirl is going to be, of course, that's in the other DC Vampires main series where that battle will be taking place. So, yeah, this is heating up, and I think that I'm hoping this will end on a high note. This series,
hoping it will end.
Well, I'm hoping this series is over. I believe this is the final issue of All Out War, but the main proper series, I'm hoping for a good ending.
Yeah, hoping for a good ending. I spoilers because I've read it. I was hoping for a good ending as well. With as you mentioned, a different iteration of Poison Ivy here as we're getting to the end of the story. But are we though? Are we at the end of the story? I think DC will, like this is sold well, right? And I keep looking back at that. Not that I blame Tom Taylor. For his deceased idea with the anti-life equation. And we saw how DC went back to the well on that again and again and again. So do we think that they won't go back to the well, DC versus Pepper? Anyway, we'll talk more about it next week. I'll save my rant for that time. But speaking of deceased, we've got Deceased War of the Undead Gods, issue number 5, written by the aforementioned Tom Taylor, pencils by Trevor Hairsine and Neil Edwards, inks by Andy Lanning and Edwards, colors by Rain Barreto, letters by Seda Temofonte. Um, Man, things are really heating up. This has been a fast-paced story all along. We saw Mixius Pitalik show up at the end of last issue. We saw some disagreements between the Heroes of Earth and the Guardians, um, with the Guardians basically saying, "Yeah, you guys can't be going out there in the universe and distributing the antidote to the anti-life equation. We have to focus on protecting the remaining planets that aren't affected." From Darkseid rather than trying to save those that are already infected. They're willing to write them off as casualties. The heroes are not necessarily willing to do that. Um, and so as they're trying to figure that out, um, unfortunately, Mixius Pitalik becomes infected with the anti-life equation himself, which I have mixed feelings about it. It's cool to see him go kind of crazy and be this kind of evil force because he is so powerful. But we're reminded early on in the issue of how powerful he is. It'll take him a split second to basically look at Darkseid and turn him into a sock puppet or something like that. And yet somehow Darkseid doesn't give him a chance to even do that. The line is, but he didn't even have time to think. Like, really? Is that a thing? Like, thinking happens at the speed of thought, speed of light. Like, it happens so quickly. Um, I don't know. Maybe Darkseid's a little too overpowered in this series, but I'll give Tom Taylor credit. Like I'm nitpicking here because overall the story's just enjoyable, right? To see all this action, to see these fantastic battles with great artwork by Hairsine and Edwards, and then to give such agency to the Spectre, right? So one of the things that Mixius Pitalik does when he kind of goes crazy is not only does he destroy Kilowog's home planet, he destroys the central power battery on Oa. As all these lanterns are out there trying to stop Mixius Pitalik, trying to stop Darkseid's army, trying to rescue people, trying to save Kilowog's home planet, the battery's destroyed while they're out there in space, while they're out there in the middle of battle, while they're flying, and all of a sudden they're suffocating in space, they're falling from the sky, and the restored quintessence. Again, not sure how DC's fits in with main continuity. Although were told in the last issue of Dark Crisis that the quintessence was restored. They're all just kind of sitting here going, well, I guess we're giving up on this multiverse, on this reality, and we'll just wait for the next one to come around. And Spectre's like, screw you guys. This reality is worth saving. And he goes and restores the power battery in a matter of moments after it was destroyed, which prevents any of the lanterns from dying, which I just really enjoyed. First of all, for a couple of reasons why this works for me. The Spectre's colors being white and green, so it really looks cool on the page when he's holding the central power battery, this giant construct that powers all the lanterns' willpower rings. But the Spectre's such a huge being, it looks just like the size of a regular lantern when one of the other Green Lanterns is holding it. And then the color scheme just works. And you have the tie-in or the history that Spectre has with Green Lanterns, being that after Hal Jordan, the most famous Green Lantern of all, became Parallax and then eventually was killed and became Spectre. He was the Spectre for a while. So there's that tie-in with this idea of Spectre as this spirit of vengeance, if you will, or avatar of vengeance, caring about the Green Lanterns. There's that history that the character has with Hal Jordan and the rest of the Lanterns. So once he reconstructs the lantern, then he goes up and confronts Mixius Pitalik and says, yes, I'm an agent of entropy. He says, yes, agent of entropy. That's how Mixius Pitalik is considering himself now that he's infected. I am the spirit of vengeance, and I'm very, very pissed off. And he's about to go to battle with a sword in one hand and the Green Lantern battery in the other against Mixius Pitalik. So that's just cool, regardless of how this kind of fits in and if the DC storyline has gone on too long or whether or not Mxyzptlk should have been able to defeat Darkseid as soon as he laid eyes on him and never been infected in the first place. Like that's all nitpicking. This is fun. This is awesome to see the Spectre with so much agency here. Because I feel like the Spectre is a little underused these days. He's a character that should have his own series all the time in my mind at DC. Even, and I say that even as somebody that's not a big fan of the Magic corner, but the Spectre to me, he's not the typical kind of magic user. He's a mystical character, not necessarily a magical character. If you can make that distinction, a character that he's not going to perform spells and go look up spells or whatever. Yes, he's super powerful. Yes, he is a character that seeks justice. Yes, he has mystical powers and he's super powerful, but to me, there's a difference between that and magical.
Yeah, and he should be coming back too, right? He should be coming back because he did merge with Jim Corrigan in the Dark Crisis tie-in, a gang war, or whatever that was, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So hopefully we're going to be seeing more of him in the Dawn of DC. I guess we'll see. Anyway, what were your thoughts on this issue? Of,
I won't need to add. I would agree with your general sentiment. The scenes you described. One scene that stood out to me. I really enjoyed the final moments of John Stewart and Kilowog. They went to defend Kilowog's planet of Balavax Vic. 16 billion lives were wiped out, ultimately killed by Mxyzptlk. And the final sacrifice made by John Stewart and Kilowog, I thought, worked very well. They went out like Marines, like true warriors, and I like that. There's some good moments there. Tom Taylor, he nails those moments, and he's doing a good job in this series where combining both the character moments with really great action. And I'm hoping he brings that same, the one series where he never had enough action and too much character, I thought was in Superman: Son of Kal-El, and I hope that when he has that when he has that Ultraman crossover with John Kent and Val Zod, I hope there's more action in that series where young Superman, just Son of Kal-El, actually hits somebody. But in any event, I enjoyed this.
I'm glad you brought that up because I know you listened to my interview with Taylor, and he mentioned wanting that Superman Son of Kal-El series, wanting John never to have punched anybody, and John does punch somebody at one point because it slipped by him and he didn't realize it. Because you mentioned the last time when we reviewed the final issue of that series about how it didn't have enough action, and that was all purposeful. And I was curious,
and that's what's so unfortunate about it. It was designed to fail. That was why I say that's why the movie Superman Returns is largely considered a failure because he never hit anybody. You can't to write an entire series. That's really what you want, a new generation. That's how you're going to attract a new generation of fans to this character. Make him gay and make him not hit anybody. The whole thing just seemed. Talk about playing into every trope you can imagine. I respect Tom Taylor. I know what he was trying to say. I listened to your interview. It was very good. And he was very frank. And I understand what the purpose was. I just thought that it was, I just respectfully disagree. I think it was the wrong character choice at the wrong time, in my opinion, because he stands out. He stands out as if it was possible to be more boring than your dad. Congratulations, John Kent. You're more boring than your father is. But that's me being harsh.
Are you familiar with the North American country western singer Kenny Rogers?
Yes, I am.
Kenny Rogers is. He has that song. My dad was a huge Kenny Rogers fan, called "Coward of the County," where the guy dies in prison and he gives his son the message.
Yeah,
you don't have to fight to be a man. And then at the end, the guy goes and beats up these kids.
You could hear a pin drop as he stopped and locked the door. Yeah,
exactly. These guys attacked his woman, and so he goes and fights. And he tells his dad's picture at the end. He takes his dad's picture down to the fireplace and says, "Dad, sometimes you have to fight to be a man." That's the message that you're giving Tom Taylor.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to fight to be a man. Or your boyfriend, whatever. He's good. Sorry, he's defending his boyfriend. Whatever.
All right. Anyway, let's move on. You guys are like, "What the hell did we tune into?" Kenny Rogers talk on the Comic Source. All right, GCPD, The Blue Wall, #3, written by John Ridley, drawn by Stefano Raphael, colored by Brad Anderson, lettered by Ariana Mayer. Now, this, I haven't seen this covered anywhere. Again, I know this is coming out late, but I saw it on no comic news sites today. Not sure, but speculator alert. There's a big death that happens in this issue. So even if you don't regularly pick up this book, you might want to go pick up a copy, put it in a bag and board, put it away for a rainy day. It's pretty tragic, but in this issue, Renee Montoya's fish literally goes belly up.
Huh.
It's tragic. It happens.
Trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning.
It happens on the last page. Clearly, the last panel, she's there sitting with her head in her hands as the fish floats in the bowl in front of her. Do I have what it takes? She says. She's clearly distraught. So, if you guys are speculators, may want to pick this up. Other than that, that traumatic event, I thought this was the best issue of the series so far. This is a very grounded story, despite the fact that it's in Gotham City, despite the fact that it has Two-Face, who's clearly what we would consider a supervillain. This is just a very grounded story, very real. John Ridley, as he often does in his work, commenting on real life situations of prejudice and racism and police overreach and inequality and that sort of thing. Minorities putting up with a system that's sort of systemically racist, as it were. And you can sort of see that Montoya, the decisions she's making aren't even in her own best interest, all stemming from the trauma and the history that she's had with Two-Face. So it's just very, very well done. It's a little bit slower paced. It feels a little bit deliberate. I like that it feels that way because it feels like it's building to something other than the death of the fish. And I just really, really enjoyed it. And the art by Stefano Raphael is I wouldn't say photorealistic, but it is very grounded. And so again, it gives it the feel of kind of almost a real world sort of story. So if you're a fan of something like the Gotham TV show or Gotham Central, any of the what are they called? Law and Order shows, those crime procedurals. I think you'll really enjoy this. This is sort of like the comic book equivalent of those type of shows, something like The Wire or Homicide, Life on the Street, that sort of thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, despite the sadness of the fish dying. What did you think, Rob?
Well, we make a joke. I want to make very clear if John Ridley is listening, not that I would imagine he is, but if he is, don't be dismayed, Mr. Ridley, because the goldfish was a beautiful metaphor for the heart and soul of this story, which is excellent. Because this is Renee Montoya. This is, to me, it almost plays out like a sequel to Half a Life, which is that famous storyline where she outs herself. She comes out as a lesbian with Gotham Central. And there's an Officer Ortega in this series who he basically at one point he ends up complaining to his higher ups, and he complains to Commissioner Montoya, saying, "Look, they on the bulletin board in the main police office, they put up a picture of me, El Gran Policia. They making a mockery of my Mexican heritage, and she basically tells him to suck it up." That this is Gotham. You gotta suck it up. You gotta deal with it. And she has flashbacks of her fellow officers posting pictures of her kissing a woman during the famous Gotham Central storyline written by Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka. It's very well done. I love that John Ridley's done his homework here. And meanwhile, Renee Montoya is absolutely obsessed with taking out Two-Face. So obsessed that because Two-Face humiliated her through, again, a very famous storyline I believe it was in Gotham Central, or I stand to be corrected on that. But regardless, she's obsessed with Two-Face. She knows that ultimately Two-Face is going to screw up. So much so that Two-Face ultimately, throughout the course of this story, he shows up and he tells, it's Two-Face himself who has to show up and tell Renee, let me go. Yes, I'm screwed up. Yes, I'm going to relapse at some point. I'm Two-Face, essentially. But there's nothing you can do about that. You've got to let it go. Just, Otherwise, you're just going to kill you're just going to drive yourself crazy. And that's ultimately the lesson that the other officers here. There's officers Sam, and there's also another officer named Eric who wants to quit because he feels guilty for one of his parolees who he ignored. Ended up committing this parolee ended up putting himself in harm's way intentionally, getting killed. And the previous issue, everything ties together here, and the death of the goldfish works so well because here we have Renee Montoya telling all these fellow officers, do your job, suck it up, do your job. Meanwhile, other officers are telling her, and Two-Face himself saying, let it go, your obsession, you can't do it all. Gotham is relentless. You got to take it day by day, and you can't control how things work. And then at the end, just as she gets home, she finds out her goldfish dies. And the irony is that of all the things that seem to have an impact on her, she gets angry at everyone else for not sucking it up and just dealing with it. And then her goldfish dies. And now it's the death of her goldfish that gives her the perspective that she was maybe searching for the entire issue, which I find kind of ironic. And when she asks herself, do I have what it takes? And she's the bloody commissioner. So this really, really worked well. This is by far probably frankly, this is probably the best written comic of the week and probably one of the most underrated.
Yeah, every time I read this, I'm just, it's so subtle. The character work here is so subtle. You're just drawn into the story. It's just brilliantly done. So,
yeah.
All right. Up next, the aforementioned Jeremy Adams has Flash 789. He's the writer. Fernando Passarin on pencils, Matt Ryan on inks, Matt Herms on colors, Rob Lee on letters. The episode with him will be out in a couple days. I definitely encourage you guys to go and chat about it because he talks about the choices that he made in this particular story. With both Mayor Wolf and the Pied Piper showing up, and the series overall. So much like his entire Flash run has been, it's very much an adventure story. It's fun. It's all ages. It's Wally as a dad. It's Wally as a hero, and it's Wally. One of the best things I liked about this issue, Wally figuring out what the heck's going on. Like there's a mystery. It's Jeremy Adams paying off something that's been kind of a subplot in Flash books for years. This idea that something was up with Gregory Wolf that we weren't aware of. And the fact that Wally West figures it out. I mean, Wally's not exactly known for his brains. And I think that's a disservice. This guy sat on the Mobius chair. He knows a lot more. He's not just the knucklehead Titan or the follower, the foot soldier of the Titans anymore. Like he's a lot brighter than people give him credit for, and that's kind of showcased by him sort of solving the mystery of Gregory Wolf, as it were. So the art's fantastic by Passarin, as it has been throughout the run. And I don't know. Every time I read a Flash comic, I can't help but smile, and it's just a reminder that comics are fun, especially these kind of comics from DC. And Jeremy Adams, man, he's so much one of us in terms of wanting continuity and wanting things to make sense and wanting people to have proper motivation and easily understand why they make the choices they make and that sort of stuff. And this is just another example of that. And I can't wait till his 1 Minute War event starts, where Flash is going to go to 2 issues a month. Because if there's one thing that I want, I know I'm not getting it for Christmas. But man, I would love to have more Jeremy Adams comics on the stands, specifically DC Comics. I really, honestly, what I really would wish if I had if I owned Warner Brothers, basically, if I owned AT&T, I owned Discovery. You know what I would do? I would put Jeremy Adams in charge of DC Comics. I would make him editor in chief. I don't know if he'd want the job, but the ship would be righted, in my opinion, maybe better than anybody else.
I don't know if I'd give him the job, but I'd give him more comic books to write. I tell you that much.
Yeah, I think him steering the ship would be fantastic. Not that Jeff Johns or Mark Waid might not do a good job as well, but the thing about Jeremy is like, and I get it. Jeff Johns has done a lot of comics. He's ready to go do something else, film, TV, that kind of thing. I don't think Jeremy would want to do anything else other than just steer the ship of DC. It'd be like one of us having the job. So anyway, I really enjoyed this issue. I'm loving Flash. I've said it before, but this is my all-time favorite Flash era of all time. Jeremy Adams on the Flash, in my mind, surpasses everything, even Johns and Wade on the book, because he's building on what has come before and bringing in guest stars and doing fun things like the wrestling issue, and he just gets it, man. When it comes to DC Comics, Jeremy Adams just gets it. Maybe I'm just on my high from having spent the last hour talking to him, but yeah, it's this fantastic issue. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And if you want an encapsulation of just how well Jeremy Adams understands Wally West, there's a basically one full page where it has a lot of dialogue on it. In fact, this whole issue has a lot of dialogue on it. And normally I'm not a big fan. I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you give me an issue and you tell me it has a lot of dialogue, more often than not, it's a less than stellar issue because it can be overwrought dialogue, doesn't help. But it works in this issue here, and in particular, it works especially when in a speech, literally a speech or a kind of a rant that Wally West gives the Lord of Order, who has possessed Mayor Gregory Wolf, which explains his actions, and he does such a great job. And it's Wally West explaining his past, and he sums up so well the last 5 years of the annoyances that we Wally West fans have had with the character that have finally been righted by Jeremy Adams, where Wally says, "This is what I know. I am the Flash. I am the unmoored. I have run through more worlds and dimensions than anyone in the universe. I've sat in the Mobius chair, done the bidding of Tempest Fuginaut. I've knitted universes back together, etc., etc." He can only create things by choice, not through order. You can't impose order. If anybody can give advice to a Lord of Order, it is in fact Wally West, and his advice is better than any advice that could have come from Batman or any other super genius or intellectual in the DC universe. This was an appropriate story to tell, to sort of put yet another icing, a nice capstone on Wally West returning in all his glory, and perfect timing too, right before the beginning of 1 Minute War, which I'm so looking forward to. I have read the first chapter of 1 Minute War, and I think it promises to be a very, very interesting tale. And I know that you just interviewed Jeremy Adams earlier today. I'm looking forward to that interview and to see if he gives any teases or explains some of his process or what he has going into this. But what a great time to be a Flash fan.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. What I will say is there's not a lot. We do talk about 1 Minute War, not a lot of things given away. I'll put it that way. But just hearing Jeremy talk about Flash, and we talk about the Mobius chair, and we talk about Wally and all that. Yeah, it's definitely worth your time if you're a DC fan, not just a Flash fan, but if you're a DC fan. All right, up next we have Nightwing Power Vacuum Part 3, written by Tom Taylor. Bruno Redondo is the artist. He also gets an assist by Geraldo Borges. Caio Felipe on inks, Adriano Lucas on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. This was a really great issue. Again, very indicative. This issue is very indicative of what Taylor and Redondo have done all along with the Nightwing series. Some issues more successfully than others, and that's a balance of action and characterization. And granted, every issue can't be the perfect balance, and some issues of Nightwing have felt a little slower. We haven't gotten as much plot progression, but gotten a lot more action. This one's a pretty good balance of both. We get Tony Zuko showing back up, appealing to his daughter, who we know claims to be the sister of Nightwing, and by all accounts, she, I should say half sister of Dick Grayson. By all accounts, that's actually true. So seeing Zuko show up and try to take advantage of his relationship with his daughter and her kind of pushing back on that, to then going to this heretofore unseen location in Bloodhaven, this like lighthouse that has a vault underneath it that's called the Hold, which is sort of this apparently secret society that also call themselves the Hold. That they seem to have some kind of mystical, magical powers. And basically, this is kind of like the Bloodhaven equivalent of Ingnaughts, right? Isn't that what it's called? The
Of
Harry
what?
Potter, the bank in Harry Potter,
Oh,
where they where it's, everything is much bigger than it appears on the
okay.
outside, and there's
Uh,
all these vaults and this
gotcha.
powerful artifacts and diamonds and gems, and even Nightwing has a box, a safety deposit box there. And when he finds out, he's like, "Wait, what?" Because these guys tell him, "Yeah, box 538." They're like, "Wait, what?" Yeah, somebody opened an account for you, Nightwing, and box 538 is yours. That's the number of the safe belonging to you in the hold. So at some point, maybe Tom Taylor will get to pay that off. I guess we'll see. But along with that action of Nightwing going out and stopping Zuko from robbing this hold, we get some fantastic characterization of Melanie Zuko, and find out in a final insult to her supposed father. Um, she goes, I know the truth. You're not really my father. My father was John Grayson, and I've changed my name. I'm now Mayor Melinda Grayson Lynn. She doesn't even have the Zuko name, and you can see how pissed off Zuko is as she turns and walks away from the visitation area in the prison there. She says, "The name Zuko will mean nothing in this city. It will fade away with you in prison." So that's just, yeah, I loved it. That brought a smile to my face. Really like the personality that Taylor and Redondo are building for Melinda Grayson Lynn. And then after that, Melinda goes and sits down with Dick, and they're chatting um, about her father and how he took it, and that interaction is a lot of fun as well. So um, yeah, this issue, like I said, it really encapsulates what Taylor and Redondo are bringing to this book that feels really special and feels different um, from anything that's really come before in a Nightwing series. And we mentioned previously about how Dark Crisis really turned out to be a Nightwing story, but the problem with that is it was so many characters and so much plot stuffed into those 7 issues that oftentimes didn't always make sense. But the characterization part of it was missing, and that's not necessarily the fault of Williamson, because it was such a big event and he was trying to fit so many moving parts in there. But then when you turn around and read something like this, where it's the perfect balance of action and characterization, I mean, this gives me more of a sense of who Dick Grayson is and how he is um, somebody that could do what he did in in Dark Crisis, right? Where he's able to overcome the Great Darkness, even though so many other people weren't. But in that story, in Dark Crisis, you have no context. You at least I came away thinking, well, what has been shown to me about Dick Grayson in this story that makes me believe he could overcome that? Doesn't necessarily You don't necessarily buy it, as opposed to in this, where we see the way Dick Grayson fights, we see the way he acts, we see who he is. You would buy it more, right? You would believe it. It's more believable here. So um, again, Taylor doesn't have the restrictions of needing to have 75 characters or whatever it is on the page and squeeze in all these other aspects of the DCU. It gets to focus just on Dick Grayson, Nightwing, so you can understand why it's easier for him. But man, this series, every once in a while there'd be a little bit of a down issue or an issue where it doesn't resonate with me. And then we get an issue like this where I remember why it's one of the best comics that DC's putting out right now. Like the whole Night Might issue was fun, but it wasn't anything like memorable. Um, but I go back and I think about that first issue that Tom Taylor did with the note from Alfred and how emotional that was. This issue, and yeah, perfect examples of a good balance of action and character. So I really enjoyed this issue. What do you think?
It was more it's the plot elements that I enjoy more. I don't need yet more character development for Dick Grayson. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Tom Taylor, he could write Dick Grayson in his sleep. He's that good at it, and I don't need that much more character development of Dick Grayson. We keep getting it whether I want it or not, and that's that's an underhanded compliment, by the way. I just like the plot elements. I like the idea of this hold. This is the first thing I believe this is a speculator alert, first mention of the hold. This idea that this is a secret sort of bank vault near Bloodhaven, that's kind of cool, and that there's something in there in stall 530 in safe 538 that's for Dick Grayson, Maroney, Marzuko. Pardon me, Maroney and Blackbuster were taken off the table, and Tony Zuko came, and he knows that the former mob boss Maroney has something in one of the safes at this hold, and I like that. It's interesting. I like the fact that she changed her name. I like the fact that his relationship with his sister Melinda, it's developing. I like that. I I'd still like a little bit more plot development. Dick Grayson talks here. He says, I have the start of an idea, but it's big and it's not all there yet for now. Well, I mean, his idea, look, Dick, if your idea is to form the Titans and the only difference between this Titans and the other Titans is this Titans is now going to be in the Hall of Justice because the Justice League are a bunch of cowards now and apparently they don't feel that they have any meaning anymore. You know, I think that's where this is going. That's me being kind of a cynical thing because I'm still having PTSD from my experience of reading Dark Crisis #7. I apologize, but I do think that this is the one bright spot. You know what? The biggest bright spot of the DCU for the last year. DC had a lot of ups and downs. Some would say more downs, but the brightest spot of the DC universe over the last year and a half has been Nightwing. It's probably been the best handled character, arguably with the most development, even in the big event, because you could certainly make a compelling argument that the big event wasn't a sequel to DC's original Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was really a Nightwing centric big event, and this fits right into that. So.
Yeah, think back to the days of Nightwing of Rick Grayson, right? Of him getting shot by Cajun Beast and having his memory erased and living in a different city. And I think he was a cab driver, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Would anybody be saying, "Yeah, this is the best book DC's putting out"? So from that to this, credit to Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. All right, up next we have Stargirl and the Lost Children #2 by writer Jeff Johns. Todd Knock is the artist, Matt Herms on colors, Rob Lee on letters. I'm really enjoying this, not least of which because I get to see Todd Knock interiors, which is fantastic. We haven't seen the villain Childminder yet, but we do know that he's behind the kidnapping of these kids. I'll give Jeff Johns a lot of credit for, even though this is a book about sidekicks that have been kidnapped and have been kind of lost to the annals of history. And it gets kind of morose at times with Stargirl wondering if any of them are still alive. And these are sidekicks from the 1940s. She's like, they'd be in their 90s now. I hope we can find them. I hope even any of them are still alive and we don't just find a graveyard. So it gets a little morose at times, but throughout that all, and it is helped by the aesthetic that Todd Knock brings to the art, it does feel like a lighthearted story somewhat. A timeless story, a golden age story, if you will. So I appreciate the aesthetic that they're bringing to it. I haven't read a lot of Stargirl. I read the Stargirl Spring Break special that was done by the same creative team that kind of leads into this. But that came out like over a year ago. And it took a while for everything to get lined up for this to come out. I don't know if you guys heard my interview with Todd Knock that I did a few days ago, but
Yes.
Basically the pandemic kind of delayed everything. But I'm glad this is coming out now. I am enjoying it. I enjoy how this ties in with Flashpoint Beyond and with what Jeff Johns is doing in JSA, and I find myself really enjoying Stargirl as a character. And I think her being teamed up with Emiko is a good choice. I think they play off each other really well, and I really enjoy their interactions. And the colors as well really suit the tone of the story and the line work that Todd Knock's giving us. Very primary colors, so it feels traditionally super heroic. And that suits this whole story that Jeff Johns is telling, which is kind of harkens back to a more innocent time, golden age of comics. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see who the childminder is, and really maybe the thing I'm most curious about is to see these characters restored to the DC timeline, whatever that means, and how much they'll show up. Who will take these toys out of the box and use them? Will Jeff Johns even let anybody use them? Will he want to be the only one, or at some point, the cat's going to be out of the bag, and these characters will show up in other books. One would think. So, what are your thoughts on this?
The character work here by Jeff Johns, I think, really works. This, in a sense, it starts off as essentially what appears to be a hunt for lost children, but these children existed, these were sidekicks that existed in the 1940s. So as Stargirl rightly points out in her conversations with Emiko, the Red Arrow in this issue, it's like, well, if we find them, unless all these children are immortal, and what are the odds of that? I mean, they're probably all old and died by now, because the 1940s, it's a lot of time has passed. So, they're on the hunt, they're looking for these lost sidekicks. We know from last issue that Daniel Dunbar character who's also looking for them, whose room that Stargirl and Emiko end up in. They see all the research that he's done, and in their further investigations, they end up in the Arrow Cave. And I want to give Todd Nark a huge compliment. His detail that he puts into the Arrow Cave here is just extraordinary. I absolutely love it. It's just it actually. It gives the Batcave a pretty good run for its money. It's very well done. I quite like it. The work, the character work in particular with Emiko, Johns does a good job of explaining it. It's very emotional for Emiko looking for the lost children, because as she describes, and I never actually thought of Emiko in this way before, that she felt abandoned on the island where Oliver Queen ultimately became Green Arrow. She was abandoned there, they didn't know she was there, and so for the longest time she thought that they had forgotten about her. So if all the characters in this story, Emiko can relate to that idea of being lost and thinking that you're never going to be found, and that's really at the heart and soul of this story. And at the end, when they ultimately end up washing up on the shores of this mysterious island, this orphan island, as they call it, appropriately named, they come across Wing, Cherry Bomb, and Airwave, who obviously haven't aged very much at all, and they discovered that the sand on the island is made of the same substance as the Miraclo pills that we know from comic book lore. Miraclo Miraclo pills were the pills that Our Man takes to give him enhanced strength and superhuman abilities, and so that's interesting, and it might explain the tendency for the children, for all these lost children who are in fact been kidnapped by this childminder who we don't know who it is, that explains why they haven't aged. But I thought this was very well done. I'm curious as to who the childminder is. I thought maybe it was Per Degaton, and that maybe he's going by a different name, or maybe childminder is Per Degaton, but a younger version of Per Degaton. But that's, knowing Jeff Johns, I'm sure he's coming up with something new and different. But I quite like this. I love the art. Todd Nark does such a fantastic job. There's a lot of crazy action sequences, almost like there's like it looks like a bunch of mechanical Humpty Dumpty eggs attacking them on the island, and that great choreographed action sequences, beautifully rendered, beautifully artistically choreographed, very well done. Colors pop off the page. I'm so happy. This is only the second issue, and we got 4 more. I wish this was a series, quite frankly. I'm really enjoying this. So this is one of my, there's been good comics this week. Emotional comics that drove me crazy, Dark Crisis, but this one I really liked.
Yeah, you can always count on Jeff Johns to go back to Stargirl at some point, because keep in mind that she's partially based on his sister, who tragically died in a plane crash. So it's a character that's near and dear to his heart, and I don't think he ever will not have a Stargirl story in his back pocket at some point. So, all right, up next we have Catwoman: Furious Hearts, Part 3 of 3, written by Tinny Howard. Nico Leone is the artist. Veronica Gandini on colors. Lucas Gattoni on letters. And there's an epilogue. I don't even know why it's necessarily called an epilogue, or maybe they don't call it an epilogue. Maybe I'm misspeaking. Because we get a kind of a second part of the story here. the aftermath, they call it. Also written by Tini Howard, but different artists. We have Anaka Miranda, pages 1 through 6, and then the incredible Juan Ferreira does the art on pages 7 through 16. Juan Ferreira and Lee Luffridge on colors, and Darren Bennett on letters. Um, I don't I don't know that I'm going to have that much to say about this. I really didn't care for it, to be honest. So I'm going to let you go first, Rocky. Give us your thoughts.
Oh, well, this is, I was wondering, because this was Catwoman 50. We never really got a lot of advertisement. I never heard DC really promoting this. And because we're coming up on Catwoman number 50, and, there's usually a propensity for DC and Marvel that if you're coming up on a milestone number like that, I was expecting, is this going to be an oversized issue? Is this going to be something special, et cetera, et cetera? Well, I never, frankly, paid much attention to the solicits. So maybe it probably was in the solicits, but if I read them, I don't remember them. Something significant actually does happen in this issue. Very significant, actually. It's part 3 of 3 of a storyline called Furious Hearts. And we've known that Selina has been developing feelings for this new character, Valmont. And he's somewhat of a mysterious character, but he seemed to be somewhat of an anti-hero. We know he's killed before, but we got the sense that maybe his morality, his sense of what's good, right and wrong has been impacted by his relationship with Selina, which has been intimate, and Selina herself is, again, she's I don't know. I mean, Batman ends up showing up, and last issue, Punchline has been trying to take over and Punchline is trying to establish a place in Gotham, and Punchline has tried to take over a warehouse that was owned by Iko Hasegawa, who's a mobster and a former lover of Selina. And Punchline, of course, ended up last issue stabbing Iko, and Batman warned Punchline, who managed to escape, saying, "Look, when Selina finds out that you stabbed Iko, you better watch yourself." Well, Batman tells Selina here, and this is where the characterization gets a little wonky here, and I'm going to do a little bit of a minor rant here. This is not Frank Miller's Batman. Now, Frank Miller's Batman hasn't been with us for a while here, but I keep thinking of that because this is a Batman that is ridiculously, I think, respectful of Selina. Like, Batman, I know you've slept with the woman, and I know you love her, but, still maintain your own sense of agency here. He's still, the faith that he puts in Catwoman, saying, "Yes, I know, I promised, I'm just going to tell you Punchline did this, but don't worry, I'll stay out of your way." I mean, the way that he pussyfoots around Selina here is kind of pathetic, I think. And it's not in keeping with Batman's character. It just doesn't work for me. It's one thing to respect Selina. It's quite another to give her that much leeway where Selina's actions here, where she ultimately ends up saving Batman's life by ultimately protecting Batman by having what she believes it's necessary to actually kill Valmont, who goes in to kill Batman. Batman, in an altercation, is holding on a piece of ceiling that it's about to fall on Selina. Batman jumps in, saves Selina, but unfortunately, he has to. He can't let go of what he's holding, otherwise it'll crush Selina. And seeing an opening, Valmont takes the opportunity to try to kill Batman. But before he can do that, Selina sees what Valmont's going to do, and she ends up essentially slicing the stomach of Valmont and killing him. And then she turns herself into the police. Now, what's interesting about this is that Batman, from the beginning, doesn't trust Valmont. Batman accuses Valmont of essentially being with the League of Assassins, because he used to work for the League of Assassins. Batman thinks that Valmont is a plant, that he's sort of a hidden operative. That's what Batman suspects. And it's never really revealed what was Valmont's agenda. Why was Valmont there? Why was Valmont getting so close to Selina? And was he just using Selina to get in close to ultimately kill Batman at some point? And why? And why would Valmont go to all that trouble just to try to kill Batman? And what was Valmont's motivation after all? If Valmont was working for the League of Assassins, the League of Assassins is controlled by Talia. Talia doesn't like Catwoman. Talia hates Selina. Why? Because Selina's sleeping with Bruce Wayne, Batman. That's why. Selina is sleeping with Talia's beloved. So I could understand if Talia who controls the League of Assassins, is putting Valmont on a secret mission to maybe ultimately take out Selena. But Batman, I don't, or now, to be clear, Tally's not mentioned in this story, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why Valmont would try to kill Batman. I'm thinking maybe he's jealous of Batman because he senses that he knows Selena loves Batman. That's why. I'm guessing that. I'm trying to get into the head here of what's going on. In the meantime, we've got Darius, who is a new character, speculator alert, Tomcat. He's a new character called Tomcat. I think he may have debuted last issue, but he's a new character, Tomcat, that's going to be working in conjunction with Eco, who, while Selena is in jail here, she ends up in jail here. Eco is going to probably take over the Catwoman persona while Selena's in jail, along with her sidekick, Tomcat, who is the former mobster Darius. And now the speech that Selena and Bruce have at the end is kind of, I'm not really sure what to make of it. Selena basically tells, Bruce is really upset with her, and she, for some reason, Selena's really depressed. It's like Selena feels she had to kill Valmont. It's not clear to me that she had to kill him. She's a trained martial artist herself. I can't believe she couldn't have found a way to stop Valmont without killing him, but yet she killed him, and then she turns herself in. The whole thing seems kind of off to me. It didn't quite work, but I'm going to give credit to Teenie Howard. I like Teenie Howard's boldness here. She's going for the gusto. She's trying to tell a very bold story. It just didn't translate in as well as I had hoped it would. It didn't quite work for me. I didn't quite buy into Selena's choices, or I didn't really buy into those motivations. And I'm a little unclear as to why Valmont did what he did, although perhaps that some more explanation will come. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Chase. Was this storyline wonky to you? What did you get out of this?
Yeah, I completely agree with you in that. Yeah, the motivations of the characters. I mean, I can make the assumption that Valmont, he's attracted to Selena. He likes the idea of who Selena is. This glamorous villain, and that's why he was attracted to her. Then met her, and she lived up to his expectations. He started falling in love with her. Jealous of Bruce. Like, I get all that. But if that's the case, it's so. I mean, we're jumping to so many conclusions. But I can kind of forgive that with Valmont because he's not a character that is established, so you can kind of make up your own motivation or your own personality to some extent because we've gotten so little. Where I have a problem with it is, like you said, with Bruce and how deferential he is to Selena throughout the story. And then even beyond that, Selena's complete loss of agency. Like, even within the story that we've had so far by Teenie Howard, if anything, you could say that Selena has been the most strong-willed and the most formidable and the most capable character throughout the run. And, even at the expense of Batman. And again, this book is titled Catwoman. So even though it's not the best characterization of Batman, I can kind of go along with it because this is not Batman's book. This is Catwoman. But then to have Selena kill Valmont and completely lose all agency, become this complete limp noodle, it just felt, I almost got whiplash with this change in characterization. And to allow herself to be captured and go to prison, it did not work for me at all. If Tinney had this great idea to tell a Catwoman story in prison, I feel like there were better ways to get her there. Because this just felt like such a big swerve from everything that's come before in this title. So yeah, this really didn't work for me. But I do agree with you that you have to give Teenie Howard a lot of credit for being bold in her story choices. Like, you can't fault her. You can't say she's not doing her best. And it might just be that we don't have all the answers yet. We don't have enough context. Maybe it's a question of her not having quite enough space in the pages to to give us all the information, I don't know.
Well,
Um,
we do know that next issue, the issue ends they teasing that there's a new alley cat in town. So I think she's using the opportunity with Selena in jail to tell the story of Iko as Catwoman, Hasagawa as Catwoman, and the sidekick of Darius as Tomcat. I'm guessing that's what she's going to be doing for the next story arc. But
yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I'm not the biggest Catwoman fan in the world, but I'm even less of a fan of a Catwoman that's not Selena Kyle.
yeah,
So
fair
I guess,
enough.
yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Okay, last individual book we're going to talk about today: Titans United Blood Pact, issue number 4, from writer Kevin Scott, Lucas Meyer on art, Tony Avina on colors. The art is fantastic. The colors are fantastic. We get this reality's version of Connor Kent in this issue. We get a lot more of Starfire, of Corey, with her kind of a little bit sad sack, kind of a little woe is me. What was I doing? Um, why was I this confessor general? With Nightwing trying to console her, saying, "Hey, we were all sort of brainwashed by Brother Blood, so don't hold it against yourself." So again, this is as we've talked about before with this series. It's a series where you don't have to have any previous context. If you're a fan of the Titans TV show, they're certainly trying to get you to pick up and read this. So you can pick this up without knowing anything else that's going on in the DCU and enjoy it for what it is, which is um, good characterization, good solid characterization for these classic Titan characters. Fantastic art, gorgeous colors, and a ton of action. So, what'd you think of this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I just sort of skim read this one. In fairness, I had 2 days to read this, and I still just skim read it just because I I think that I spent too much time trying to find another reason to complain about Dark Crisis, and this was one of the victims of that. But I will be rereading this. The art here is fantastic. I do love the idea of sort of a Connor Kent, and in a different in an alternate sort of universe where Lex Luthor actually makes a sacrifice here and ends up being killed by Starfire, essentially trying to protect the clone, his clone slash son, Connor Kent. So I kind of like how Kevin Scott sort of plays with the history a bit here, and it's almost like a what if story, which in a different way. And I always like the Marvel what if stories. It's like, what if something was slightly different, and how the power of Baron Blood, in this case the Church of Raven, and the impact that has, and how Starfire was under the influence of the Church of Raven, and she's overcome that, and now they're in this alternate universe, and they gotta this alternate timeline, and they got to figure out how to correct it. So it's intriguing. It's got fantastic art. Some of the best art. And as a matter of fact, who is the artist? Meyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucas Meyer. Yeah. And Tony Avina on the colors. This really pops off the page. Really good. And I apologize to Kevin Scott. I'll try to do more justice in the next 2 issues. But I will be reading this, and I'll speak more of it when we review the next issue.
Yeah, that idea of Connor Kent as a clone of Lex Luthor and Clark Kent is not new, but the fact that Connor calls Luthor dad here, that is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a different take, and yeah, certainly interesting. So there are a couple of other single issues that we didn't chat about. As I mentioned, Scooby Doo, Where Are You, number 119 is out today. Also, Harley Quinn, the animated Legion of Bats, which is a little more irreverent, like the Harley Quinn animated series has its 3rd issue out. And then in terms of collections, there's a ton of collections out this week, I guess just in time for Christmas. Batman Catwoman has its hardcover. Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chang has its hardcover out. The latest volume of Flash, trade paperback, number 17, which covers that Eclipso story, is out. Batman Killing Time has its hardcover. And I did ask Tom King about that when we chatted. That episode will be out today as you're listening to this, maybe Wednesday before Christmas. Yeah, I did ask him because he told us that it was a linear story and yet it had flashbacks. So go listen to my Tom King chat We talk about a ton of other stuff too. Love Everlasting and Human Target and Danger Street. Tons of stuff. But I did ask him about Killing Time. Also, the Rogues, Joshua Williamson Black Label book has its hardcover out. Superman Birthright is getting a deluxe edition hardcover. Harley Quinn, No Good Deed, Volume 1, which is the Riley Rosmo, Stephanie Phillips run that has its first trade paperback. Strange Adventures from the aforementioned Tom King and Mitch Gerrits has its softcover trade coming out today. The Death of Superman 30th Anniversary has its deluxe edition hardcover coming out. There's an Absolute Swamp Thing hardcover edition that is out. A Batman Silver Age omnibus hardcover.
Wow,
Queen
there's a lot.
Nubia, Nubia, Queen of the Amazons hardcover is out as well. So tons of hardcovers. You're looking for some gifts, hit up your local comic shop. And yeah, other than that, tons of content coming out for you. 12 Days of the Comic Source. They're all 12 episodes this year for 12 Days of the Comic Source are interviews mostly with creators. There is one episode that talks about the new Marvel Snap mobile game, and then another one with a YouTube content creator about speculation in comics and how you can have the hobby fund itself. But for the most part, creator interviews, they've been a lot of fun. Thanks to all the creators who've taken the time to show up, and we really appreciate you guys listening in. So, book of the week for you, Rocky.
It's a toss up between Stargirl, the Lost Children, but I had so much fun with Batman and Robin. I'm going to go with Batman and Robin for my pick of the week. What about yourself?
I got to go with Nightwing. 99. I think I must have said it about 6 times when I was talking about the book, but perfect balance of action and characterization. Just loved it. And I'm not even talking about Dick Grayson characterization. The moments with Melinda Grayson Lynn, formerly Melinda Zuko, and her father, or supposed father, her namesake, Tony Zuko. Those were just fantastic. Like it was great to see those moments with her telling him about changing her name. So kudos to Tom Taylor rather for the writing, and for Bruno Redondo for giving us the character acting in those scenes as well. So
absolutely. Well, that's good. Well, I've got a number of things coming out probably later in the week. I know that I'm going to be working on my top 20 comics of the year, and my top. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a top 10 worst comics of the year. I'm going to try to stay positive to end the year. I'm still working on different things that I might be working on. I might do a full rant on Dark Crisis as a whole, and I continue to do my indie comics review. I did it with another individual, Jason from the Get Fresh crew, Weird Science. Jim was indisposed this past week. And yeah, so I'll probably touch base with you if you find some extra time. Maybe we'll end up having a Christmas gathering or live stream of some kind too. So because next week it's going to be after Christmas. So Jace, I wish you a Merry Christmas, and if I don't see you during the week, and everyone listening.
Yeah, happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. Hope it's a joyous time. And yeah, the best of 2022 Comic Source episode that Rocky and I, Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration that Rocky and I do will be coming up. Hopefully we'll get to it sooner this year. I think last year it didn't come out till February. I'm really, really hoping to get to it in January this year. I have it on my schedule to go through the books that I read, go through my reading list from 2022. I didn't do it again this year. I say every year I'm going to make notes of every comic I read as I read it. So when I get ready to do the best of, I just have to go down my list and look, oh, this is a best moment, this is whatever. I didn't do it. And God, I'm kicking myself right now, because now that's going to take me hours to go through. So
yeah, it's hard.
Anyway, yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm fortunate that I've done a lot of indie reviews this year, so I can always go back and just look at my past videos to refresh my memory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I could do that too. But God, that's hours and hours of content as well. So anyway, everybody, first world problems, as it were. So again, happy holidays. Thanks for joining us as always. Sorry the episode was late. Totally on me. Hopefully, I won't make that mistake again. But don't forget to head over to YouTube if you're listening to our audio only. Do a search for Rocky's channel. It's Comic Boom exclamation comic space boom exclamation point. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, like this video, leave comments. You guys know what to do. Conversely, if you want to be sure you don't miss out on any of the 12 Days of the Comic Source or any of the other audio only episodes, just go to wherever you get your podcast and do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode. Appreciate the support as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you guys later.